Hey everybody, I hope you all are doing well and welcome back to Michael's Matters. And here we are at the beginning of February, which is really the beginning of everybody's favorite time of the year, which is tax season. Because for a lot of people, it is the one time of the year when the government actually gives us our money back. I mean, even if it is our own money, and even if it may likely be a little bit smaller this year than in previous years. But of course, this always leads everybody, all of us included, to the biggest question, which is when will we get our tax return? So today we are going to talk about when you can expect to get your tax returns, approximately, of course. Some of the reasons that it is anticipated this year's tax returns might be smaller than previous years, and some reasons why someone's tax may come in late. Now, before we get to it, if you like these videos, if you find them interesting, if you find them helpful, or hey, if you at least find them useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe because it really does help the channel to grow, and we are so thankful for that. But also because you can get updates when our newest and most informative videos become available. All right, now let's get down to the video. So first things first, let's get to the estimated timeline for tax returns for 2024 or for tax year 2023. I guess really, however you want to look at it, they're two sides of the same coin. One good thing is that for this year, at least at this point, it does seem like the IRS is about as ready as they will ever be to be able to get tax returns out in time, especially in comparison to last year and the year before, where for sure some staff were out of the office, as well as paper returns were getting stacked up in the employee break room at the IRS headquarters, and the phone lines apparently were not working. But it seems like all of that has been fixed and most of the backlog has been resolved. Now, the filing deadline for this year is back to normal at April 15th. Remember, it had been extended and kind of moved around in previous years, so all that has been put back to where it was before the pandemic, and the IRS says that we should be able to expect our returns back in a reasonable amount of time. So let's talk about when the IRS is saying folks should be getting their returns back, because remember, every year, they actually give a pretty good approximate deadline in the previous years. But sometimes, in fact, obviously, often, it doesn't work out that way. In general, the IRS is saying that e-filers, so folks who do it digitally, either through a tax software or through a tax preparer who submits them electronically for them, those returns on average should take less than 21 days to get returned. In fact, 90% of them should be returned in less than 21 days, but they can be returned as soon as 10 days from when they are submitted electronically, and a week later than that if they are submitted on paper through the snail mail. The IRS generally starts accepting tax returns at the end of January, so we don't have an exact date at the moment, but if someone was an early bird and got their taxes in at the earliest possible date, so let's say, hypothetically, January 22nd, the earliest someone would get their tax returns in and would be accepted, then it would be 10 days later from that, which would be February 2nd, or in the case of paper returns, February 9th. If someone was to get their returns in on January 29th, then the anticipated return date would be on February 9th for e-filers or February 16th for paper filers. If we follow that timeline for February 5th filers, it would mean a February 16th electronic return, or for paper filers on February 23rd. And then for February 12th, the e-filing returns will be back February 23rd and March 1st for paper files. So that continues on. I'll put the chart up here for anyone who looks at it through the non-peak season, which is basically through the end of March. And those timeframes are going to look a little bit different as we get into the peak season. But also super important to mention is that for folks who are filing for specific tax credits, so things like the Earned Income Tax Credit, the ITC, or the Child Tax Credit, the CTC, those returns with those credits on them will not get sent out until at least mid-February, allowing the IRS to verify all the information is correct. So those won't get sent out until mid-February, regardless of how early they got submitted or how they got filed. It's still going to take till mid-February or later. Also, as I mentioned, for the peak season, those timelines might look a little bit different, but I'll put up a chart here for the peak seasons as well. And really, the only one difference to keep in mind is that return times may take a little bit longer, as April is a prime filing month. It's the peak filing time, and the IRS gets hit with waves of returns and are just continuously scrambling to try to get them out. So it's not going to be as strict of a timeline as would be pre-peak season, and it might even take a little bit longer. Now, as in previous years, once you have submitted your tax return, there's going to be an IRS specific website where you can check the status of your tax return, which is the Where is My Refund page, or the IRS To Go app. This page or this app you can use with your personal information to see once your taxes have been accepted by the IRS, and if there are any issues or additional information that is necessary for your taxes to get done, and also, most importantly, when your return is going to be sent back and when it is sent back. In order to use the Where is My Refund functionality, you just have to have your Social Security number or your individual taxpayer ID or ITIN, your filing status, and the exact amount of refund on your return. You put all that information in there, they can look you up, and it's actually pretty easily. Now, lastly for today, let's talk about one of the unfortunate aspects of taxes this year is that it is expected that many folks will see a tax return that is much smaller than in the last couple of years. It had become, let's almost call it a trend since 2019 to have bigger and bigger tax returns every year. In fact, according to the IRS, the increase in the average tax return from 2021 to 2022 went from $2,899 in 2021 up to $3,121 in 2022. So that is about a difference of $400 or 7.6%. Definitely a noticeable increase. And a lot of that had to do with people's income going up as a result of inflation, but also because of the various and sundry stimulus programs that also had been put into effect during the pandemic, what ultimately meant more money in the pockets of Americans. More specifically, things like the Child and Dependent Care Tax Credit is going to be reverting back to its pre-pandemic amounts, meaning instead of $8,000 for one child or tax dependent, up to $16,000 for two tax credits in 2022. That number for this year, 2023, is going to go back down to $3,000 for one or up to $6,000 for two. Obviously, you can see that is a big difference. Another big one is going to be the Standard Child Tax Credit, which in 2022 allowed for a $3,600 tax credit for children between the ages of 0 and 5 years old, and a $3,000 credit for children 6 to 17 years old. But for this year, that number is going to go back down to $2,000 for all children under the age of 17. Yet another really quite big hit to families and people with kids out there who are going to feel that one for sure. And of course, the last big one that's going to bring a lot of tax returns down is the fact that stimulus checks, which were last paid out in 2021, but if they had been missed, they could have been claimed on 2022 taxes. So essentially that $1,400, if not more, all that has been exhausted. So there shouldn't be anyone getting those back, except for in very limited situations. So overall, looking at the way taxes are going to go for this year, at least prospectively, there are a couple of unknowns. There are a couple of things that are obvious, and there are a couple of things that we won't know until the tax season gets underway. First is the fact that everything seems to be back to business as usual, which is good, except for the fact that many of those problems with our tax system overall that left millions of hardworking Americans in unfair tax situations, they have not been resolved. They were just pretty much papered over during the pandemic with stimulus money. And there, of course, there was stimulus checks and enhanced child tax credits and earned income tax credits. And all that was good, but all of that is gone, which means that we are right back to where we had left off, but of course, with much higher inflation. Also, at least at first glance, at the moment, it seems like maybe the IRS will be able to handle this year's tax filing in a much more efficient and effective way, as they did get a whole boatload more funding to hire new staff, to bring folks back to the office, and to put at least some more band-aids on their outdated phone systems and technical systems and all that stuff that didn't get upgraded. Also, not for nothing, whether good or bad, there will be a considerably lower number of people filing the taxes this year from the previous couple of years, because it really will be just limited to those folks who worked and needed to file taxes to get some of that money back that got withheld while they were working, instead of the influx of folks who had filed taxes in order to get the heavily increased tax credits and stimulus checks and things like that. So all in all, let's keep our fingers crossed, and maybe, just maybe, we can get our tax returns back in 10 days, or at least in less than 21 days. All right, so that's it for today's Michael's Matters, talking about when you may get your tax returns this year. That's for 2024 or tax year 2023, and why they could be late if you are, of course, getting specific tax credits. Now, if you like these videos, if you find them interesting, if you find them helpful, or hey, if you at least find them useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because it really does help the channel to grow. And of course, we are so thankful for that. Thank you. But also because you can get updates when our newest and most informative videos become available. So for Michael's Matters, I'm Michael, hoping that you take care of yourself, take care of others, and have a happy, healthy day.